in one room in the house, there was one wall where you need to have one screw, and then when you turn the screw, basically you can move the wall. And then when you move the wall, there was like narrow stairs that leading to special room which was underground. And this room was actually torturing chamber. It was all wrapped up into plastic sheets, and there was like this big grinding machine.
Czech Center for Investigative Reporting and Dark Riviera present Protagonista, a war room content project hosted by Pavla Holcová. Protagonista puts investigative reporters at the heart of the story. Stevan Dojčinović is a Serbian investigative reporter who exposes the symbiotic relationship between organized crime and the political sphere. In Serbia, politicians are not corrupt. They are the ones who organize crime. So, Stevan, I have a first question for you. That's how did you get to investigative reporting?
Oh, that's a very long story.
Make it short.
But to make it short, so since my childhood, I was into punk scene. And as a punker, part of the punk scene, how I actually participated in punk scene was actually creating the fanzine. It's kind of like do-it-yourself magazine. So I started to create this...
At the age of 14, 15, 12?
Yeah, something 15, 16, I think I started into punk. So I was interviewing the bands, I do interview, I was doing like reviews of the shows, of the new releases. I mean, if I was better in music, I maybe be in some band, since I was not so good in music, but I want to be part of the punk scene. The way I was involved was actually through this making fanzines.
So, okay, if I understand it correctly, you are one of the best Serbian investigative reporters because you could not play any musical instrument.
You can say that way. Well, I mean, that was kind of like my first touch with this profession. And then later, basically, I wanted to go into to apply for political sciences.
Why?
From the left side, I mean, which was normal because when you're involved in punk scene, then you're more like kind of on the left spectrum. So I was more something sort of like anarchist. So I was really mad at people who are filthy rich and got money in corruptive way, And that in that time it's really important. So Serbia was in really bad shape. So it was 19th. So the country was in war. There was a sanction. There was like literally whole economic collapse. So it was really bad. Like when I was a kid, I was going into these never-ending lines to wait for sugar, milk. And, all of these things also, when you're a kid there, it's kind of like make you really mad. And punk was kind of good kind of way when you get involved. Then through punk, I also kind of little bit get this left-wing ideology through the music. So it's all this mixed together kind of, I think in the end, made me to become investigative reporter because basically through journalism, you fight against injustice.
What about the crime? You got quite straight into crime reporting on Balkan mobsters, cocaine trade. It's not a thing you can learn at school, I guess, but it's not really a thing that average journalist would choose.
Yeah, I mean, the crime is definitely my main focus. I mean, I do some stories on corruption. I mean, yeah, definitely the crime is focused. I mean, for two reasons. First, really in the Balkan, the crime, it should be focused. So that's kind of like, I think, the main topic. Also in Balkan, the organized crime defines everything. But I didn't just kind of...
Wait, what do you mean defines everything? Politics, daily life?
Yes, in Serbia it's pretty visual for different reasons. First of all, there was like, since 2015, which is almost 10 years, there's series of murders. There is open organized crime war in Balkan between different mafia gangs, and there are close to 100 people killed in these 10 years. So you can see this murder, like they happening in the center of Belgrade, like very close to our office,
How?
Which is a center.
Could you describe how does it? Like, is it bomb? Is it shooting?
Everything. So they use all like last murder happened. It was last murder happened in September this year. With sniper shot, they kill a man in Montenegro. But they also put like bombs under cars, kill with the guns. But also there was like Mexico style, literally brutal murders, especially in 2020. A lot of people were like kidnapped. They were brought in one house who was specially made for the murders. They call it slaughterhouse, it was called. It was on the outskirts of Belgrade. And then they were like torturing people, killing them basically by chopping their heads without using guns, just like knives and axes. And then they were like dismantling bodies there. So you have all of this sort of stuff. And people are usually
How did the house look like?
Well, people always confuse this happening in Serbia, but that because we're in Europe, but that's really it is because this, let's say, organized crime was never cleaned from Serbia. And if you remember, like, we have prime minister who was killed in 2003 by organized crime group
Zoran Đinđić.
Yeah, Zoran Đinđić with sniper in 2003. I mean, it's not so deep history. So literally, like, he wanted to basically arrest organized crime group that was involved in drug smuggling. But this group really closely cooperated with Secret Service, and then basically organized crime and Secret Service.
We will get back to the cooperation and trainings of Secret Service.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
So tell me, like, what should I imagine when you said there was a special house? Should I imagine like a dark bunker, or should I imagine a huge villa or a farm? How did the special house where they were slaughtering people only a couple of years ago, how did it look like?
Well, outside it looks like normal house. That's the thing. So outside there's nothing suspicious you will like recognize.
So, but they were torturing people there. There must be a lot of noise.
No. It was like really, it was very well planned. So outside it is outskirts of the Belgrade, very close to the Danube River. Mm-hmm. And outside it's like normal house. When you enter inside, it's also like normal house. There's nothing suspicious.
So there's a living room, TV set,
like
books,
regular
kitchen.
Yeah, completely like normal house. I think even the first time when Serbian prosecutors entered this house to research it, they couldn't figure out where did they torture these people because everything like look normal. And then only later, thanks to the person from this group who testified, he explained to prosecutors to find actually secret chambers where people were tortured. And it's like really crazy like in the movies, because actually there was one wall, I think into the, I'm not sure, into the garage or in one room in the house, there's one wall where you need to have one screw, and then when you turn this screw, basically you can move the wall. It was literally like this. So it was kind of even not possible to see it. And then when you move the wall, there was like one narrow stairs that leading to special room which was underground. And this room was actually torturing chamber. And when they entered, they understood it because the whole room was clean. It was all wrapped up into these plastic sheets. And there was like this big grinding machine where they used to grind the bodies. But like it was like literally, like in the Batman movies, it was like literally wall which you need to find special trigger to move the wall. So literally first time they came to research house, they couldn't find it. And later the person from the group basically explained how to get into this chamber. So there was this chamber, and basically they are like bringing people in this chamber, and it was underground, pretty much isolated. So definitely was not possible really to hear anything outside. And in this chamber, they were basically torturing people until these people give them the codes for their phones, because they were kidnapping members of opposite gangs, sometimes members of their own gangs, which they didn't trust completely. So they tortured them until they give them like code for their Sky phones. It's like special phones used for encrypted communication. And when they open their phones, they basically killed them because they got access to their phones. And they didn't use any kind of firearms, so the people were killed by axe, like old
beheaded.
Like Ottoman style, like Turkish style, and then they were like chopping their bodies into small pieces, which they basically grinded. And then when they grinded the body, it like they collected like what is left, basically fluid. Body turned into completely like fluid into some plastic bags, which they brought. So the reason why the house was close to Danube River is actually that they then went to the Danube, and they literally just throw away this liquid into the river so the fishes and other animals basically eat it, and like no remains was ever found. So like literally, if the French police didn't manage to decrypt the Sky system, where they found the pictures of these murders, because this gang was like literally recording every step of like killing people.
Why?
I mean,
vanity or souvenir or to prove they did it?
I think that it takes more than journalists to really analyze this, but, one of the main guys who was kind of the brain behind the whole thing, he was the one who was really eager in keeping these photos. It's like, and he had like full phones of these murders. For which reason, I'm not completely sure, because in the end, this is what actually made them arrested, because literally police couldn't find any remaining of any of these bodies. Literally, the reason they in the end got arrested because they were like taking these photos and the videos of this torturing, and like, it's really hard to understand why. I mean, in some cases, they were even sending photos to, like, they kidnap the guy, they kill him, so they take photos and they send photo to his boss, and they say like, you're the next. So like, which is also
threatening?
Huh? Yeah, in a way, like,
boss?
Yes.
So they had his Sky number? They were in contact?
Yes, the Sky is in a way, it's some kind sort of like forum for organized crime. So it was like literally, if we see, I don't know for one single, like, let's say, legit user of this system. Everyone we know who used this system was basically organized crime figures. In a way, what you can do, you cannot directly send to their boss, but first what they do, they torture you until give up your codes. So basically, they will use the phone of their victim to send to his boss, because victim was already communicating with the boss, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't just send to somebody, he needs to approve you. For me, it's even more like kind of, in a way, sinister was like the way how they were actually getting to the next victim, and they will use your phone, and then they will pretend it's you for next following days or week. And this is the way how they bring another person.
Lure them.
Yeah, basically well, luring them. So like it's only in a couple of cases they really kidnap person. Most of them actually they were like luring them to come, which is really like, and they were really good in making this plot to looks like really real, and they managed to lure a lot of people, I know only one case that one person really understood that was some kind of suspicion they want to come, but they managed to kind of lure whole chain of people actually to willingly come to house, and then when they come they understand fuck, and then but they're already done. And this is like 2020, so I don't tell stories from 70s and 80s. It's like literally post-COVID thing is like 3-4 years ago. So I mean, and this is like Serbia. This is happening, and it's not something. It's one-off case. I mean, this was like kind of maybe one of the most brutal cases, but all other cases are also like brutal. If somebody set up bomb under your car and then explodes, but you're still alive, and the fire slowly kills you. It's not also a pleasant way to die. So I mean, this kind of things also happening all the time, and there's still murders. Especially in Serbia and Montenegro, connected to these gang wars. So this is everyday's life, and but the problem is not just like murders and murders. What is also known, what really makes important for journalists to cover this story, is that these organized crime groups are really tied and connected to the government. So this is basically
that's a tradition in Serbia, right?
Yeah, that's tradition, but that's not normal. It's not like tradition. Okay, let's accept it. It's my cultural thing. Don't touch my culture. It's like a bad tradition, which
I agree. But let's get to the point how it started. The connections between secret service, organized crime, and politics.
To get to this, you need to go to an archive, and I think I was reading from not my work, but for other journalists, that maybe this connection even started in socialist time, even during Tito. Because I think there's some written traces who show that even in that time, basically the Yugoslavian government was teaming up with Italian organized crime to do together like cigarette smuggling. So there's traces about it. And there was really great journalists who did amazing investigative reporting on ties between organized crime and government in 19th, especially Miloš Vasić, who was one of journalists which I
Admire?
And Milošević is one of the reasons actually I got also into investigative journalist. Like he wrote one of the best investigative books in Serbia about assassination of prime minister. So when
Zoran Đinđić.
Yeah, Zoran Đinđić. And this is the reason actually when I wrote this book, I was like, I want to do this.
Okay, how old you've been when Đinđić was assassinated?
2003, so I was like 18.
Do you remember how you learned it from the news or?
Yeah, I just saw like I was walking on the street and it was...
You've been working on a street? What did you do?
No, walking. Walking. But I've been, before I was selling the sunglasses on the street. But in the time I was just walking on the street and there was like, this TVs in some store. I saw it was like this video because it was recorded the moment basically after he was shot. One TV station had this footage. So I remember see it. And he's connected. I didn't answer you this question for this 19th. So basically, I mentioned because this Miloš Vasić was one who really investigated this connection between government and crime in 19th, which actually brought to murder of prime ministers connected. Because in 19th, we definitely had a lot of proofs about ties between organized crime and the government. In Balkan, usually organized crime literally makes some sort of joint ventures with the government. So it's not organized crime finding some individuals, it's literally the government teams up with organized crime like some sort of the program, like they're partners,
Joint venture.
Yeah, literally, it sounds crazy, but like literally on this level. So for this reason, which nobody...
Could you give me example? Because I don't know, the Balkan organized crime I know is bringing cocaine to Europe. I just really don't see how this could be joint venture with politicians. With police,
I'll
maybe.
Okay, so we'll get back in 90s to show you one example in 90s and one fresh example just to show it's working. And it doesn't matter, yes, cocaine, but in 90s they were doing cigarette smuggling. So Milošević didn't want Yugoslavian army to be involved in all war fields. Because he was thinking in future, he didn't want to have, his guys somewhere committing war crimes and to be very easily attached to him, which would be very easily if it was done through the army, right? So his idea was that basically he will create some kind of parallel structures.
So he would have plausible deniability.
Exactly, yes. So, and if you look, the biggest war crimes committed from the Serbian side in the wars were not actually so much through official army, it was through paramilitary structure. So this is basically what he created. So in order to create this structure, he reached out to organized crime. And he offered deals to organized crime figures that they create paramilitary group. The government will give him some sort of protection, but not just that. The government allowed them to participate in the businesses and smugglings, which make them filthy rich. So basically the deal was you can smuggle and make money, but I need you to find people for the war, And typical case, his very famous case, globally, it's Arkan. So everybody knows about Arkan. And he was
Arkan and his White Tigers.
Yes. So he was leading this paramilitary structure, White Tigers. So before that, he was basically criminal figure who operated in Europe, and he was involved even in petty crimes. So he was involved in burglaries, stealing stuff, and then overnight he got back to Serbia and he became leader of paramilitary units. He went to the basically football stadiums and he gathered a big group of basically football fans who he actually turned into his
hooligans.
Hooligans, which he turned into his basically soldiers. So what's important, Arkan was later killed. And the person who inherited his structure, and after the war, his paramilitary structure was even officially incorporated into the state. So it became armed force of Serbian Secret Service. And there's the guy who basically...
Should Secret Service have armed force?
Not, but in that time it had. And that ended really bad, because then this armed force of Secret Service, which was basically army, parallel army in the state, the guy who was leading this structure officially, he teamed up with a group who was leading drug smuggling operation.
What is the name of the group?
Zemun gang.
Oh.
So this group become very powerful. So Zoran Đinđić, prime minister, who came after Milosevic in 2000 and tried to reform some of the stuff. One of the main goals was to basically stop organized crime. So what he did, he decided to create new laws and new institutions in Serbia, and he tried to copy basically Italian system. So we brought some law fighting organized crime, which is most likely copy-pasted Italian, but we created special institutions. So Đinđić created a special court for fight organized crime, special prosecution to fight organized crime, and he was basically preparing to arrest this Zemun gang, this criminal group who become really huge and kill so many people. And what's the problem? They start kidnapping really big people, big in terms of money and influence. So they created a special system to stop them. But they were so powerful, and there were so many people working in state structures, they were not unstoppable. It's not so much known that before he got killed by a sniper, Đinđić survived another murder attempt from the same gang, and they couldn't even stop it there. He was driving, and on the highway, one gang member was in the truck. An idea was he will stop with the truck the car of the prime minister. I mean, he was not just his car, when the prime minister goes. So he literally wanted to jump and stop his car. And on the spot...
With the truck?
With a truck, and on this special place where basically other gang members were waiting with this bazooka to basically destroy the car and kill the prime minister. So what happened, it was like literally when he went with the truck to stop the car, Đinđić has some really crazy driver who managed to really kind of, you have this on the highway, you have this metal thing. Mm-hmm. So he literally drive it on the metal and really closely managed to flee, so that the truck just hit this metal and really didn't stop him. And the driver of this truck was arrested, who was really important member of this gang. But the system was so corrupt that the judge released him. Can you imagine, release him, immediately? And
without any investigation, or
no, he was just released. So did he
it was just random driver accidentally crashing into the prime minister.
This is how the judge explained it, and
I could be Serbian judge.
No, really. I mean, the judge is one of the biggest problems. We will come to this in Serbia. But so I'm just saying, it was system was so corrupt. They couldn't. He survived attempt of assassination. They arrest the guy and let him go. And then, I forgot, in a month later, they come back again, but this time they kill him with a sniper shot. So they were powerful like this. Because,
explain me one thing. You survive assassination attempt, then you want to stay safe, right? How could anyone kill you? You have bodyguards, you are protected, you wear, bulletproof vest.
You need to understand the system was so much full of people working with them.
With Zemun.
Yes, and they have this whole problem that huge part of Secret Service basically was working with them. And after Prime Minister was killed, we see that they have people in his surrounding who literally was giving information about his movement lively to this gang. Literally he couldn't trust nobody. And everybody's afraid to go after this unit, because this unit known as Red Berets, who's now officially part of the Secret Service armed, police was afraid because they were really powerful in information, in weapons, in everything. So everybody was afraid of them. In a way, they would do this if they're unhappy, they kind of stop the main highway in Serbia. Mm-hmm. And then government needs to come to negotiate with them. So this is kind of the power of these guys, So everybody believed that only army was the only one who really can deal with them, not police, So, the criminal group had them on their side, So anyway, but actually the plan was after he survived his first attempt, they start working faster. They need to bring new law. They couldn't arrest gang before this law because we didn't have introduced the organized criminal stuff. So they fastly actually brought this law, and they appointed prosecution for organized crime and something. And if he was not killed, I think in literally following days, the government was supposed to start arresting these gang members. So literally they kill him basically just to stop the whole operation literally in a days before. They killed him in front of the government. So when he was literally exiting the car with his bodyguards, but they were really high on some like upper floor in some building with really good sniper, and they have one of the best snipers in Serbia, the guy who was soldier. So he shot him when he was kind of getting from the car inside the government, so they shot him there.
So he had something like 2 seconds to kill him, and he did.
Yeah, it was like literally with 2 bullets. It was like one he missed and shot his bodyguard, and second shot prime minister. Bodyguard survived, and prime minister was dead in the car when they were driving him, I think, into the emergency room. Not much changed till today. This sounds crazy, but really it's not. Because the problem is, current government, we have president who was Minister of Information in Milošević's time.
So,
and after Vučić, yes. So, and the biggest problem, like, relation between organized crime and the government are now stronger than they were, like, ever. Vučić managed to kind of get back organized crime also to become kind of popular, like in 90s. It's not just this government ties.
Popular, what do you mean?
Yeah, so it's like in 90s, it was very popular to organize crime go and to give interviews on the national TV stations.
Wait, what?